Welcome to your Motherhood Matters, where we invite you to join the momversation and go beneath the surface.
Each week, we dive in as we have real and personal talks about what matters to your motherhood. Hello, everybody, and it is our premiere episode of Your Motherhood Matters. I'm Melissa, and this is
Jen.
And today we have a very important topic to kind of set the tone for what we think our podcast is really about. And it's kind of your approach and your attitude towards motherhood. And it is going to be what you make it. So today, Jen had read an article that got her pretty heated, and we thought that we would discuss it and just kind of talk about self-care. And the article that Jen read got her pretty worked up.
Yes, so I had read an article and it was talking about don't tell me that I need self-care. Let me just pull up the...
And this is an older article. It's a 2018 article, but a lot of moms on the social media were agreeing with this, which Jen thought was a little insane.
So I think for me, why it struck such a chord was it was talking about like, stop telling me that I need more self-care and that I need to practice that. And I just thought, you know, for me, one of the reasons why when Melissa approached me about doing the Your Motherhood Matters podcast was that I felt really strongly about the fact that, like, as mothers, it's so easy to just put ourselves at the bottom of our list. It's so easy. Like when I had my daughter in 2010, I really felt like I lost who I was as a person, that life just sort of really became all about her. And that was a choice that I made. But then looking back as the years, looking back now that she's turning 10 in August, that really, the further and further I got away from myself, I really started to be like more unhappy in my life, more unhappy at work. And, you know, this Your Motherhood Matters, you know, you matter as a person, right? And so I realized that, like, I can't take care of other people well if I won't show up for myself. So in 2015, I have a picture, which I guess we could share for this episode because it is the reason why I prioritize self-care for myself. And self-care to me has nothing to do with manicures or pedicures or any of the crap, if you will, that's peddled as self-care. Really, self-care starts in your mind. I feel like it starts with mindfulness, being aware of your thoughts, being aware of your emotions, being aware that, you know, every thought that you have is an interpretation. Yet so often we take it as like, that's a fact, right? So really getting clear and making those radical choices, even if they're small choices in the day. So in 2015, I really had hit rock bottom. Mentally, physically. I ended up leaving a almost decade-long teaching career. My body, I was sick. I had really flared up with ulcerative colitis, which is an inflammatory bowel disease. And I had it for, at that point, 12 years, I believe. And it had just been chronic, like the time flare up, then remission. But in 2015, it really, you know, on the first day at school, I remember having a flare up and I just thought, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't keep going. And so my second child, my son, he was a few months shy of his second birthday. So I went, and I remember I went to see a therapist, and I don't even know if I don't think I told you this story, Melissa, but I went to see a therapist and he said, you know, you are so in your head right now that you, like, if you were to fall down on the ground, no one would help you because they don't know if you need it. Because happy or sad, you just put a smile on your face and you keep going. And he's like, you know, you're struggling right now because you're so in your head editing what you think other people want to hear instead of doing what you want to do. And so at the time, I thought I was there to talk about how to manage ulcerative colitis and, you know, get back to the classroom. And what was really coming square in my face was the fact that I was going to have to look at some things I didn't want to. I was going to have to look at a marriage that was failing that I didn't want to admit to at the time. I was going to have to look at the fact that he was right in the sense that I didn't know what I wanted because I was worried about what other people would think and saying the right thing that other people needed to hear. And so I remember feeling so triggered and judged and fucking pissed off. I don't know if we're allowed to swear. We can make this explicit.
Podcast, you can swear.
Okay. But I felt pissed off because I thought, how dare you, right? How dare you judge me? And so I remember I made it my mission that I was going to, you know, take charge of my life in such a small way as to just not edit myself. So I remember that in 2016, that was the late fall of 2015. And then in 2016, I remember I was like, I met like I started making new friends. You and I became friends in that winter, right? And I had stopped editing myself. And then all of a sudden, when you don't edit yourself, people will fall out of your life because they don't like the unedited version of you. And that's something else that I realized, like, I can't connect with people if I'm not being myself, right? And so, yeah, like not being the unedited version of me, you know, I started to attract all these people into my life, all these positive relationships I still have 4 years later. And it all started with like the radical thought of, you know, you need to take better care of yourself. And so that sort of initiated the journey. I had a huge mindful shift. And then, you know, in 2019, I guess late 2018, I sort of started to feel stuck in my life because I had made all these changes, but I was a little bit stuck and not progressing forward. So that was the year that I really dedicated in 2019 to just sort of go on a journey with myself. Like, what would it look like to love myself so much that I would put my care as a priority, right? To learn to pay attention to my thoughts, to learn how to manage them, you know, to be able to really like sink deeper into my relationships with other people, to show up 100% for myself, to show up 100% for others. And I have to say, like, even some of my most strained relationships, they shifted for the better when I put myself first. And really, like, it's been such a game changer. So when I read like stuff saying like, don't tell me, I think I had such that strong reaction because like I look at that picture of who I was in 2015 and I'm like, this is what you get when you don't when you don't do self-care.
Is it the
like,
Christmas picture? Is it the Christmas picture?
Yeah, it's the purple coat. And I had just had my hair done. And well, we'll share this on our Facebook, but like
your before and afters are insane. And you're smiling in both.
I'm smiling in both. And I have it makes me feel afraid when I look at that picture. Like, I don't like looking at it because I just see the vacancy in my eyes.
Yeah.
And there was no drugs or alcohol involved. No. I was totally sober. I was not on anything, but I'm just so vacant. And then, yeah, the before and after is shocking. It truly is an energetic shift completely. It's like, it was just, and you know, that's how and the funny part was it wasn't like I was like a recluse at home. I was socializing a lot. Like I was going out, I was doing all the things, right? But I think I always thought if I do more, like when I look at that picture of like it's me, like that woman, I say, like, because looking at it, it doesn't feel like me anymore. But I just think like that woman showed up, like I showed up in life at that point as I can do better. If only I do better, I can do better. I can do more, you know, and the more that I did that, the more vacant I became. So it really was about learning how to do less, learning how to say no. So I think it was in 2018 that actually I started saying no to a lot of things and letting things fall away so that I could really protect the yes, and that my yeses started to matter to me and to other people, because I was just so overcommitted. I felt like I had to have all the plates spinning in the air. And one thing I realized was, you know, the more that sure, I did more, but I wasn't really present, you know? So who cares if you're doing more, but you're not even in the moment enjoying it? Like I did a lot with my kids, but was I really enjoying it? I don't think so. Not the way that I am able to do it, like to enjoy them now.
I think a big thing, and I think that what articles like that are trying to say is that we're asking someone to put something more on their plate that's already too full.
Yes.
But I think that self-care for me, when my kids were little, so my kids were born very close together. So I was already overcommitted in that area. But for me, I was raised like a lot of people were raised to be a people pleaser. And saying no to me was like the worst thing ever. And then I just sort of realized I need to say no for my own sanity because I cannot take on anymore. And sometimes just realizing, you know what, my plate's really full and I need to be able to say no so that when you do say yes, you're not saying yes with resentment or anger. You're saying yes because you actually want to be there, and then you can actually enjoy what you're saying yes to. And that, you know what? What's the harm in saying no? Someone might be angry at you. Oh, well, you're probably resentful at saying yes in the first place. Another thing that really helped me was I was going to a MOPS group, which was like moms of preschoolers, which was a lifesaver. And they had a lady come in, and I can't even remember what I think she was like a preschool teacher or she did home daycare or whatever. But I always remembered what she said was mothers need rest. And she said, you can let your children see you do the laundry or clean the house. They can see that. Do not do that when they're in bed. And make sure you put your children to bed early because you need rest. And when your children are in bed, you need to rest. And that stayed with me. So when my kids were little, I would clean the house during the day. I would stay at home and I would just give them some vinegar and water in a bottle and a cloth and let them clean along with me. But I never saved that for nap time. Nap time was like, I looked forward to that. Like, because it was like nap time is like 6 to 7 hours into your day. If your kid's getting up at 6 a.m. and nap time's probably like 12:30 because you have to feed them lunch, like that's almost a full work day just to get a break. That's your break. So I did not spend nap time like cooking and cleaning. I spent it like laying down because I was told by someone in authority that I could rest. And then I would put the kids to bed, say 7 o'clock. I'm not cooking and cleaning at that time. I'm resting. But a lot of moms are under the impression that, they need to clean the house when they come home from work, or they need to, be cleaning during nap time or whatever. And they're giving themselves no rest, and they're not able to function at a good, healthy way because they're so run down. They're so tired and they're just done. And so, yeah, I'm not asking that mom to go get a mani-pedi. That's ridiculous. I'm asking you to do a lot less and be contented in it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm with you. When my kids would nap, I often would nap too because I was tired. And, my now ex-husband, he worked very long hours. So sometimes, and quite often, he would have to go on a work trip away, and then no one was coming. So I learned pretty early on that, I have to sleep when the baby sleeps. And a lot of people will roll their eyes at that and go, well, must be nice. And, if that's you on the podcast listening, that's your interpretation, right? What you have to do for you and your family. But in that instance, I think like you, what got me through was taking rest, because there's no way that, like, just thinking about it now, like, if he was away, I mean, when our daughter, here's an example, our daughter was 6 months and he was gone for an entire 4 weeks straight. So I was alone with her for 4 weeks. So what the heck would I have done if I had been too proud to take a nap, when she napped? Because no one was coming. It was me. So I definitely agree with you. It's just building in the rest, and like realizing that, maybe one of the things I think that I realized too with having the kids was, my kids are 3 years and 3 months apart. So there was more of a gap there. And we did put we put our daughter in daycare while I was home with my son for most of my mat leave, because again, the long work hours my husband had, and I wanted to have like more one-to-one time with the baby, which definitely is a luxury to do that. But one of the things that I did was I got comfortable with, like you said, saying no to things and realizing that I'm not saying no forever. I'm just saying no for right now. So realizing like a little excursions, because again, like I'd often take the kids by myself. Like we didn't do a lot of family of four things together, because he did work a lot. So it was often me and two kids by myself. So, I found it so easy to take just one child. Like, gosh, that's like a breeze, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter and I, it was very easy for us to go places. And then when I had my son, all of a sudden, trips to the zoo just felt overwhelming. Like I really did feel, to be a one adult with two kids on these little outings did feel a little bit overwhelming. So, I started saying like no, like to myself, and like limiting what we would do, right? And then as he got older, then we started adding more and more activities in. But it's okay. I realized it's okay to say no, like for just now. And then when they're bigger, and they're not. And I really try to one of the things that I do is I do self-hypnosis audio. I do that daily. And some people, again, oh, that must be nice to do that and to have 10 minutes to yourself. I don't have that. I do that when I have my kids. So I say, Mommy's going to go listen to her audio now, and I press play. And that 10 minutes is for me. And one of the things that I like about doing it, just like how you had your kids watching you clean, my kids are watching me do meditation. They're watching me, they're seeing that that's a priority, right? Because I always, like, my grandmother was amazing at this. Like we grew up and we knew that every morning grandma got up and she did her exercises. She would do stretches and she would do mindfulness meditation. She was way ahead of her time. But my mom didn't do that. Like my mom, had 3 kids, her and my dad, and my mom prioritized her motherhood and put us ahead of her needs, like our entire lives. So that's kind of like, even though I had in the back of my head, my grandmother, my dad's mom, does this, my mom did not. So yeah, it's really like, I feel like it's important to include my children in seeing this so that it normalizes it. Like, it should be normal for them to want to take 10 minutes for themselves when they're an adult, and to just have that quiet time, and even if you don't have like an audio that you listen to, silence, like doing a practice of silence where you get quiet and you don't do the dishes and you don't do the laundry. You literally sit for like start with 5 minutes and just build it up from there and see how long you can go, and like let your mind get quiet. Let the thoughts stop racing, because that's the thing. I think we're really living in a society now where we're so addicted to busy. And we're so like addicted to, seeing things on social media. That's another thing. As far as self-care goes, something that is certainly accessible to everybody. If you have social media accounts, who are you following? What messages are you consuming? How do those messages make you feel? Do they make you feel good? Do they make you feel bad about yourself? One of the things that I did to prioritize self-care is to really pay attention to what I'm consuming on social media. So I've unfollowed a lot of people. If you have people on your Facebook friends list, right, that you can't unfriend, because of social reasons, but you don't, or family, right? But you feel that the messages that they're putting out are harmful to your mental health, or you don't want to see them. There's a nice little unfollow button so that you're still friends, but you don't see their stuff in your feed. So I really have limited who I see in my news feed, and I really am careful about the messages that I'm consuming in my day, right? And if,
you have to be careful about who you're surrounding yourself with too.
Yeah.
Because I notice that if I'm around a mom who's more like, oh, whatever, and those kids and their brats and whatever, you find yourself slipping into some of those patterns. Where if you're around someone who's, much more positive and trying to be mindful and enjoy them and, look to the best of everything, then you'll find yourself slipping into those patterns. So it's not even just who you have on social media, but it's also just who do you allow in your inner circle. And it's okay to, not to eliminate people if it's not going to be good for you and your family. And that's another way of saying no. It's just an unfollow. It's just who are you going to prioritize your time? Because for me, like spending time with friends, like that is my self-care, but that's also a luxury. And if I'm going to allow you to be around my kids, like I do have to be choosy with who I'm going to allow around as well. Someone that I might have hung out with, before kids or even 10 years ago isn't someone I necessarily would hang out with today.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Like, if think about, like, look at like, what is the quality of conversations you're having with the people in your immediate circle, right? And, another thing I did for self-care was I deleted myself from all the mommy groups. So I'm not in any mom groups on Facebook at all. I'm not in my kids' school mom group. I'm not in any of it. And I love it because the conversations that I have are, with people face to face. And they're not like, I'm okay with not knowing what's going on. in the sense that like I don't want to read. Like sometimes I find the mom groups can be a bit on the negative side where someone might post a problem, but because you have 1,000 or 2,000 people in the group, then you get the keyboard cowgirls in there who are just really jumping in with their opinion, right? And sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it really can be that, warm-hearted, loving, assistance. But then other times it can just be really negative and hurtful. So I was finding that I didn't want to read that anymore. Like I didn't want to be in that. So just removing myself from that, like those types of environments made a big difference too. And some people, when I tell them that I'm no longer in that, they're shocked because I guess it is kind of shocking to say, like, I'm not in a mom group on Facebook because that's pretty normal if you're a mom. Like, normally you're in a couple of them, but I removed myself from that. And honestly, like, I did that in 2017, July
Oh, wow.
2017. So it's been a while. It's been a while. And I don't miss it. I don't miss it.
You know what I've noticed with the moms groups is that a lot of people will reach out with their issues with their husband or issues with their in-laws or whatever. And it can be quite negative, but it's also like, man, like you don't have any connections that you can trust with this problem in real
Right.
life. And
Right.
that's because, I think that people are afraid to have those real friendships or commit to those real friendships for whatever reason, so that they're having to reach out to, these people in the Facebook groups. It's just really sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just I don't know, it's a like we're much more connected digitally than obviously we ever have been in the past. And I guess the moms of this generation of children that we're raising right now are probably the first. I guess we are the first generation who is so digitally connected because the internet basically came out when we were all in high school. So yeah, we are the first group of parents who are digitally connected. And yeah, those connections, I don't know, some of them, like, I like how connected we are. And I do have a mom group. I shouldn't say I'm not in any Facebook mom groups because I'm in a very supportive one. And that is an online birth group that was formed with my daughter. So that one, but it's small. It's 10 people. It's like an intimate setting. Like it's not the same, right? But that one I'm part of, and I've been part of that, oh my gosh, for almost a decade, which is crazy. But yeah, that's a very supportive group. But what I'm talking about is like the bigger mom groups. And just to circle back to self-care, because I guess maybe we went on a tangent, but well, no, not really, because like what you're consuming on Facebook or social, that is part of your self-care, right? So it's just monitoring. And that's, I think, a part of self-care that people don't think about as self-care, because we're so used to these digital messages everywhere that we don't think about it as often. So, just doing a little inventory or a little audit on like, how did that message make you feel? And, instead of fueling it, if it made you feel bad by writing a comment or a negative comment, maybe is it a better choice to unfollow? Because
Yeah.
maybe, like you said, the connection that you had like 10 years ago isn't who you are today, because we're always changing. Like you're not the same person you were a year ago, a month ago, and every day, the nice thing is we get to make a choice, right? Like moment to moment, you get to make a choice. And I think to me, that's what self-care is. That's why, reading this, Don't Tell Me I Need to Practice Self-Care. Like to me, self-care starts when I open my eyes in the morning and when I close them at night. It is an all day long thing of really taking into consideration What conversations am I going to choose to participate in? What type of content am I going to choose? You know, how am I going to choose to show up in my life for myself, for my kids, for my work? You know, it's like, it's not something you, like, to me, the practice is like, oh yeah, I'm going to book, like, I'm going to draw a bath for myself tonight. That isn't self-care. That's you enjoying a bath. That's all it is, you know, but it really is, you know, self-care to me is the mindfulness throughout your day. And it's mindfulness is even meditating for 10 minutes. Sure, I listen to the audio, but that's like a boost. Really, the mindfulness is how I move throughout my day, right? The choices, like the choices to, you know, am I going to respond or am I going to react? You know?
I think that sometimes self-care is asking for help, which is
Mm-hmm.
something that's hard for people. But I know when my guys were little, so my husband also works long hours, but he was in an apprenticeship. So when the kids were little, he had to do night school. So I think it was 2 days a week. He
Oh,
would not be home for
wow.
until like, I don't know, 8 o'clock at night. And that was hard because my kids weren't even at the point where I could like have a conversation with them. If he was to do night school now, I would be like, go, I'm fine, I've got this. Like my kids are now like 7, 8, 9, so they're, but when they were like, I think it was like newborn to 1 and 2, or it could have been like pregnant 1 and 2, like that age, I was like, no, I'm watching the clock like a hawk. So what we ended up saying was we told my parents, like, we need your help. We need you to come. And they would come. Um, Sometimes they would come for a while, they would come and give us a date night once a week. But a lot of times during the night school, they would just come and have dinner with me. So I wouldn't be alone. And I know at one point I had a girlfriend who her husband had like a course they took once a week. He was always at school one day, and we would have supper together just to be like getting together and not have to do supper alone and the bedtime routine alone with our kids. And these are things that, like, because I know a lot of moms will say, well, I'm a single mom, so I can't have self-care. And you can do this type of self-care, but you need to be able to humble yourself to ask for help, or even if you see someone else who needs help, to put yourself in a position to help them. Because the time when my girlfriend was having these Thursday nights, like my husband was home and I was just like, I'm going over. Or sometimes I'll still go over to a girlfriend's house and bring her dinner sometimes if I see that there's a need for that. Um, so you need to be able to ask for help. You need to be able to accept help when you do need it. And, you know, single moms, like, you need help. Like I couldn't do it 2 days a week. So, you know, you need to be able to, you know, look for people in a similar situation or friends that can help you. And that's the time when you say yes and you don't do it with resentment, because I was happy to be there every time. You know what I mean? But I mean, there's other things in my life that maybe I had to say no to in order to say yes to the instance that I wanted to say yes to.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, like everything that you say yes to is saying, when you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. So I think, like, as women, it's important that we realize that we shouldn't, well, I don't want to say shouldn't because we don't want to shit on ourselves, but it's important to make sure
Don't shit on yourself.
don't shit on yourself. But I just, when you know that when you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else, please make sure that you're not saying no to yourself.
Yeah.
That is something that I wish someone would have told me when I was struggling so hard in 2015, you know, and maybe hearing that message earlier on in life. But that's just something that, you know, make sure that those yeses that you give so freely to other people, that you save some for yourself, you know, because at the end of the day, you can't care for other people if you're not willing to do it for yourself first. It's just like the airplane. Put the oxygen mask on yourself.
The other thing too is that because I am in a million moms groups. You're in one. I would easily say I'm in 50.
I'm in one with 10 people.
Yeah, I'm easily in 50 because I do parenting writing, so I always need to know what's going on and to have like a touch point. But one of the things that I do see a lot is that you're not asking your partner for help. I think a lot of moms think that they need to be everything. They need to work, they need to do the parenting and the house, and and they'll complain about these partners because they need help and they're not asking for it, or they're not holding their partner to the standard. When my kids were little, and even even now, I would go, as soon as Lucas would walk in the door, I'd be like, bye. And I would go with a girlfriend for a run, and I would leave him, where even now, a lot of times he'll walk in the door and I'll go with my sister to the gym and I'll just say bye. Because I cannot be a good mother and carry on with so much worry and stress and anxiety, and I need to physically work it out. And he needs to take over the parenting and do that horrible afternoon between after school and dinner when the kids are insane. You need to take that shift sometimes solo, because I need this for myself. So, sometimes it's your partner, if you have a partner, that needs to step up, and for you to say yes to your own mental health, and to being, I'm a better mom if I have done some exercise that week, if I've had a friend that I can talk whatever I'm dealing with, if I can get another perspective, if I can have someone listen into what I'm going through and offer advice, or even just listen, I'm a better parent and I'm a better partner. So a lot of times it's my partner that I'm asking for help to as well. And it's okay to ask them for help, and it's okay to ask them to step up if they're not stepping up, because I'm a firm believer in people will treat you the way you teach them to treat you. So the moment I see, anyone slipping, I need to let them know, like, I'm sorry, I can't accept that. You need to do a little better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all about setting boundaries, and we'll definitely do another episode on that. But I would love for people to comment on Facebook and share with us how you make time for self-care in your life, and not the self-care that the media is pumping out to you, but like, how do you define it, right? And how do you build it into your routine? And
or
if
have you even thought of this as self-care? Is this like a mind blow right now, or is this something you were aware of?
Yeah, like because one thing I didn't realize circa 2015 was how easy and accessible it could be. I always associated it with having to go out somewhere and do some activity, and that realizing that it doesn't have to be that, that it's accessible, and that, taking it even a step further, like I said, and realizing that it's not just like this thing that I do for 10 minutes a day, that it's like being aware of like what we're consuming, who we're interacting with, and really like paying attention to thoughts and feelings throughout the day, and like levels of energy too.
Definitely.
I'm so glad that we had this conversation as our first official podcast episode, and I can't wait to see you guys in the Facebook page and continue the conversation about how important this is. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. Join the momversation and follow us on Facebook at Your Motherhood Matters.
Help others by sharing this podcast with your social media channels, and don't forget to leave a positive review. You can hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes.